Hello and welcome to another episode of Seeing Live. I'm Colion Noir. Our first guest is a conservative commentator known as Stacy on the right. What's going on, Stacy?
I'm back. And the people have already got to my Instagram account because they want to see this. We discussed it, you and I, and everyone wants to see this thing. And so you said, oh, come back on and show it to me. Yes. And so I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm going to get to go back on. So before I can even get back on here, my little chair was still warm from the last time. And people commenting on my Instagram, saw you on Colion Noir. That's awesome. Also, thanks for posting this. I'm like, oh my gosh, I posted that when I first got it, like a long time ago. So anyway, this is the thing I told you, which I call the purple pea shooter, but it's actually a Charter Arms Pathfinder Light. It's a snub nose revolver, 22 Magnum. For you pansies on the internet, as I was just showing Colion, it is unloaded and it's tiny. See this right here? I can put this almost anywhere, and believe me, I have. So
hey, I mean, I feel for women in a lot of ways when it comes to carrying a firearm. It's kind of hard for you guys.
It is. It's sometimes I'm like, oh, that's easy. Like today, I have on jeans, so I can pretty much do what I want. But if you're trying to carry and keep concealed, you know, you're not supposed to print. You need to be truly concealed. It can get tough. But this little one, that's why I got it. And it was, again, impulse buy. We were buying. In fact, I should have shown you the other one. I have a collapsible stock one.
I just want to correct you on something.
What?
When it comes to buying guns, there is no such thing as an impulse buy. It's just finally realizing that you needed to buy the gun that you've always technically wanted. You just didn't realize it.
I wanted it always.
Yeah.
Well, I hate purple. Let's go there.
Wait, hold on. Wait a minute. You hate purple.
I do.
But you bought the purple pea shooter.
Well, first of all, it's kind of a lilac, don't you think?
No, that's purple.
Okay,
you can come at me with all the little fancy $500 words all you want. That's purple.
Well, that's what kind of person I am, first of all. We know that. This is not shocking. But I will say that when I saw this, it spoke to me. It was on the table, and this guy, this gun seller, he has them all tethered to the table. So when you walk in, there's no asking, can I see that? What's that? You just walk over and pick it up. So I was at the table, and we were looking at these other firearms, and my husband was like, oh, look at this. Oh, look at that. And I was standing there mesmerized by this little beauty.
By the lilac pea shooter.
I hate purple, I said. Then I picked it up, and I said, wow, this is so small and cute. And so I was like, what is this? And so he told me what it was. And see, it doesn't even have the little cocking thing. It doesn't even have that.
Like a
you
hammer.
Just grab and go. Do it. And it doesn't kick. It doesn't kick hardly at all. So you're just like, pow, pow, like the crazy chicks in the city on New Year's Eve. Like that.
Wait, the crazy chicks in the city on New Year's Eve?
So this is St. Louis, okay? Now, I'm not
I forgot.
Was born here. You know what I'm saying? They on New Year's Eve, everybody in the city fires guns into the sky. It's crazy. You can't go down there. You can't just go down in the city because, that's what they do.
That's what they do. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Now, speaking of which, Missouri's been making some news in the gun world lately. What are some of the issues you guys are facing?
Okay, so, well, first of all, we have an enormous amount of gun freedom going on right now because we have supermajorities in the legislature at the state level. We have a new Republican governor, Governor Greitens, who actually, as a part of his advertising for his run for the governorship, showed himself blowing stuff up by firing a gun. That was his campaign ad. So he's a former Navy SEAL, and he's really into the Second Amendment. So we're good there. We've had an expansion on a bunch of different fun things, but we also have the liberals who feel like every time something horrible happens, they have to blame us law-abiding gun owners. And so there's a piece out in the St. Louis American, which is our black newspaper, and this woman says, the title of it is, If We Loved Our Children as Much as We Loved Our Guns. Now I'm going to tell you something. As much as I like guns, none of that stuff even holds a candle to the children. Yeah. I mean, I love the children way more than I love any objects. And these, as cute as they are, these are tools. So what I like to think when I hear that is that it's someone who wants to deflect away from the real issues, which honestly, you and I both know that inner cities in America are plagued by fatherlessness. They're plagued by poverty, poor schools, low tax base, low property values. And these things all come together to form a perfect storm that then enables criminal elements to operate with impunity. And here in Missouri, we had some studies done that showed that our hotspots that make us the #1 per capita murder, or city in the country,
Uh-huh.
is because of the drug cartels south of the border
Yeah.
operating within the city. And that's why people are killing each other. They're fighting over turf. So when you and I are sitting here and we're having our fun talking about the Purple Pea shooter and all that, it's not us law-abiding gun owners that are the problem here. The problem is that we have open borders. We have politicians who want to declare sanctuary cities. We have understaffed and underfunded police departments. And we have a lack of support for our police. And we need to change those things instead of making dumb articles like, I don't know if this woman even has children, but I tell you what, she'd be the first one crouched behind me if some lunatic jumped off and I was armed and she wasn't. She'd be right behind my kids, though, because I wouldn't let her get in front of them, because I obviously love her. I love my kids more than I love her. And I love my kids more than I love these guns. But that's why I have the guns, because I love my kids.
That's the irony behind it. I say it over and over again. They've always tried to create this narrative that gun owners somehow care less about kids because of our love for firearms, when not even a vast majority, all of the women I talk to who carry firearms carry them, especially the ones that have kids, carry them because of their kids, not in opposition to them. I don't understand how they continue to kind of push this narrative, but then at the same time, if we really want to talk about creating a title that makes sense, why not talk about the inability to hold the politicians who are the supposed leaders in these communities accountable for the derelicts. They've essentially neglected these environments and allowed them to just degenerate into just chaos in some aspects, whether it be on an economic level, whether it be on an educational level, whether it be on an economic opportunity level, what have you. And yet we tend to want to always focus on the firearm, as if we can't make the connection that if I were to go into your standard garden variety suburban area in America, they are not plagued with the same gun violence.
No, they're not.
And that's a pretty clear-cut reason why. There aren't the same inadequacies in terms of the type of schools that the kids are able to go to, the resources those schools have, just the overall environment as a whole. But yet somehow the conversation always goes back to the firearm. And I'm just not understanding, is it because it's so much harder to hold the politicians accountable, in that we feel like, well, I just want to grasp onto something that I can actually touch versus something as slippery as, say, a politician? But that's never done. And I kind of bang my head against a wall trying to figure out why, because taking a holistic approach to cleaning up the situations in these inner city communities would do tenfold over any type of firearm or gun control legislation that any moron sitting in front of their TV drinking boxed wine could ever come up with. It just boggles my mind in so many ways. And I'm like, why are we still having this conversation about guns? When we clearly know what the issues are that are perpetuating the environment that these communities are basically relegated to.
Well, we're talking about 68 years of uninterrupted Democrat rule here in the city of St. Louis. And I know for Democrats, the first thing they do is deflect from that. And they say, well, Stacy, what does that have to do with it? The first place they pivot to, Colion, is personal responsibility. Now, remember, personal responsibility is our enemy. We shouldn't be blaming people for their circumstances. Yeah. Making bad choices, that's not our room to judge. You don't have room to judge, Stacy. You can't judge people. But if I say, well, you Democrats have been in charge of the city for all this time, why don't y'all do something about the mess that you created? The schools have gone down under your rule. The population has flown under your rule. Why don't you do something about that? Then they'll say, well, every person's responsible for their own choices. So, if people choose not to have fathers in the home, that's not because of the Democrats. And you know what I say to that? Bullpucky. What you're talking right now isn't even close to being the truth. The honest to God truth is, we have welfare policy brought on by the Democrats because they see blacks as less, they see blacks as victims, and they want this kind of control over populations, because you don't see a whole lot of Republicans protesting or going to school board meetings all ticked off when school choice is brought up, it's always the Democrats. The Democrats are the ones who don't want black kids coming out of the inner cities and getting good educations. And I personally believe in neighborhood schools. I believe in rebuilding neighborhoods. I don't think kids should ride the bus 55 minutes each way to get a good education. But I also don't think that trapping people in a neighborhood where you find yourself in this neighborhood as a black child, you don't have to get a bad education there. You can get out. That's the way Americans rise up. Our poverty in this country is unique, and that other countries, it's the same groups of poor people decade after decade. In America, if you take a group of poor people and you poll them, 10 years later, the majority of those people are no longer in that same income strata, because in America, you can work your way out of poverty. And so I want people to, when you see, it's like a trigger mechanism. Just like when I see a little notification that says you've done a new gun video, I'm like, woohoo, it's a reaction. You see, if we loved our children as much as our guns, any comparison at all, if you're reading, if you see a tweet, anywhere you see a message that compares one group to guns, your little radar should be going off immediately.
Absolutely.
You should be thinking to yourself, uh-oh, I'm about to be fed some bureaucratic crap. And I'm not going to listen to this. I'm going to read it and pick it apart. And in this story, she talks about as many people were preparing for dinner and shopping on the weekend, getting ready to go out, gunfire erupted, like just all of a sudden, purple pea shooters in the city jumped up and erupted in fire. And they were just, look at him, look at it, look at this crazy little thing. Oh no, my hand is making it do that. So and it didn't do that in the city either.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. What's interesting about that, you know, and I've read several books on the issue as well, from different perspectives. And one of our episodes we had on someone from it's not the proper name. It's like the guy's responsible for the shot detection system that they're employing across the country, ShotSpotter. And even from his experience, you know, he's intimately familiar where a lot of this gun violence takes place. And even he pointed out, he was like, even within these environments, we are talking about a very hyper-exclusive group of people within these communities that are committing the vast majority of the violence in the community. How is it that we can't hyper-focus on that component as well and do something about that? And in the same breath, it almost inadvertently says, not even inadvertently, maybe purposefully, but it's assuming that everyone who lives in an inner city community is an enraged killer, and we need to get rid of the guns and take them out of their hands because they're just enraged, evil killing people who want to just slaughter any and everything that they could possibly point a gun at. When that is absolutely not the case. Most of the people in these communities are largely there due to economic reasons, but they're still good people. It's not that it's bad people coming together and saying, hey, we want to create a community of misfits. But that when you focus your energy and perspective always on the idea of we need to get rid of these guns, it's the guns, it's the guns, it's the guns, you neglect the real issues which inevitably allow this circumstances to continue perpetuating itself over and over and over and over again, while at the same time insulting the people who live in these communities who are actually trying to make a way out of it or just to make a living. And so it frustrates me immensely when we have to keep having this conversation with the other side because they choosing to deflect away from entertaining a real issue because they've been in charge of these places for decades now and have done nothing. And so here we are again having to basically counter a narrative written by this woman who clearly has an agenda on her hands in that regard, and it bothers me. I don't like it. It's gotten to a point where it's getting ridiculous because people are still dying.
Yeah, and that's what I keep telling people when it dovetails together with the school choice because people who are well educated, in other words, you can read in the 3rd and 4th grade, you don't have a prison system in Missouri preparing a bed for you when you're in middle school because they know you're going to drop out, get jumped into a gang, kill somebody, you're there. Boom, you're the prison pipeline. You're in there if you can't read or do math in the 4th or 5th grade, 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade. So I connect those two together because the Democrats are the party of the unions, the NEA, and they want to stop people from escaping the city. And what you say about the percentage of people who are doing the wrongdoing is so true. You're talking about less than 20% of the people are involved in the crime, 80% of the victims. And if anytime you see a problem, scratch the surface, you'll find a Democrat underneath because the reason those 20% aren't jailed and gotten off the streets is because we have what they call prison reform or sentencing reform, which takes violent offenders and gives them opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to reoffend again, and they kill again and again and again. And then when they finally have killed 3 or 4 people, then they're sent off to prison, which means they've victimized multiple families, and they've made it necessary for nincompoops to write articles like this over and over and over again. And so they're our own worst enemy. They're our best enemy, these Democrats. And when we're talking about this, we're highlighting it. But I'm again, scratch the surface of any issue. You're going to find a Democrat there with some feel-good policy that's actually harming our most vulnerable groups. And some of the best people I know live in the city, and they deserve better than this.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's feel-good policy at arm's length. Because I guarantee you, if an individual went inside of the community that this one, I'm assuming she doesn't live in the inner city community, but let's say she lived in suburbia, or the vast majority of people pushing these policies. If that individual would have come into their area, come into their little microcosm of suburbia and committed a crime, it didn't even have to be killing someone. They'd want to throw him in jail immediately. But somehow, since it's further off removed and it's contained within this element of hell, so to speak, they don't have a problem with just allowing it to circulate throughout the entire population of people in that environment, and say, oh, no, we're just going to reform. We're going to do all of these feel-good measures to make myself feel better, because it has nothing to do with improving the situation over here. It's to make themselves feel better. And so what ends up happening is this place over here implodes while you sit over here with your coffee and write stupid articles. With that being said, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll finish talking.